So for the sake of using software, which is Revit in this case, it's advisable that you have an external mouse. So an external mouse connected to your personal computer, your laptop as it may be, would be more advisable to enable you to navigate and move around the software better. So before we start off, let me talk about the topic a bit. Now, deciphering architecture is one of the first steps in the building design process. We need to have an idea of what exactly is in our architectural drawings, models, and things that we should look out for before we start assuming places where some of the structural elements may be, such as the columns, the beams, the positions of the slab, the shaft openings, criteria for foundation, and all of that, cladding details as it may be. Now, this is important because we can't just go ahead and just place it anywhere we want, because we may have issues with clashing. Clashing, for instance, could be a column in the middle of a door that's not quite functional. We could have beams passing through rooms, making the room kind of defeat the aesthetic features, and quite a number of things as well. Now, there are going to be cases where it's quite unavoidable, but that's the reason why we have what we call coordination meetings, where we actually, have talk with the architect, who is actually the principal person that designed the building in the first place, and asking, okay, where we can compromise and look for a more functional building. Now, in the event of arranging structural elements in a building structure, we want to make sure that we are trying to do that in the safest way possible, following some kind of principle, simple rules based on the material that we're using, the budgets of the projects as well. All of those things, we have to pay attention to it. So once again, welcome. I'll be going ahead to share my Revit screen. Permission from everybody, so I'll start off. All right, great. Now over here we have what we call a Revit model. So this here is our architectural model. All right, so inside your participants folder, like this, you're going to be seeing in the shopping plaza projects folder. Now if you open up the shopping plaza projects folder, just like this, I'm just going to open it up. You're going to see two subfolders. One is going to be the architectural, and another one is going to be the structural. So right now we are looking at the models. We want to look at it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the architectural folder, and what we do have is that we have three files essentially. Okay, so we have here the 2021 version, we have a 2023 version, and then we have a 2020 we have a 2024 version. Now anytime you see a version attached to, let's say, a .001, those are what we call backup files. You want to make sure that you are using the original version here, not the backup files. The backup files are more or less backups just in case there was an error made, so it's for you to restore it back to a previous version. In this case here, we don't need this, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. So the reason why I provided three version files is that Revit as a software has this backward compatibility issue, where for instance here, if you are using an older version of Revit, say 2022, you will not be able to open a 2024 version of that file. But if for instance you are using an updated version like 2024, and you get a 2022 file, it means that you can open up that 2022 file. An example, for instance, is that I can actually go ahead and open up this Revit 2022 file in my 2024, but I can't open a 2024 file in a 2022 version of Revit. Okay, so once you've gone ahead and downloaded this file, right, all you need to do is just need to open it up in Revit. So by default, it will open up in your Revit software. So over here now I have the model, and as a structural engineer or designer, the first thing I need to do is I need to look through the model and determine exactly where I can place structural elements. So we need to decipher the architecture first. Now on the left side of my screen here, I have some navigation keys in Revit. Now understanding Revit as a software is quite another different topic, but I'll be doing that as much as possible. So for many of us that are new to the software, in fact, I'll be doing that quite a lot. So over here on the left side of the screen, we have what we call the properties panel. Now this properties panel allows you to understand exactly what you are looking at, or based on what you've opened or you've selected. So right now we can see under the properties panel here that this is a 3D view. We have some additional information such as the view scale, the detail level. We have some other things such as the visibility graphics overrides. All of these functions, as you get to use the software, you understand it a lot much better. If I scroll down as well, I also see here the identity data, which is the view name. So right now we can see the view here is labeled 3D presentation. We can also see as well that if it's opened, we also see the name as well on the tab at the top, which is 3D presentation. Now just below the properties dialog box, we have what we call the project browser. And the project browser allows you to organize and see your views per time. So right now we have different types of views. We have floor plans, we have 3D views, we have elevations, we have building sections. We have some other subcategories as well, such as legends, schedules, sheets, and then you can actually create more as we go on. Just below it we have the families, and then we have groups. Now families basically is how most of the elements that are modeled in Revit are managed and created. We'll talk about that later on. Now any particular view that is open per time, you will notice that it is going to be bold in view. So right now we have here the 3D presentation. Now if I go ahead and double click on it, you see that it will open it up. Right now this one was already open, so it feels like nothing happened. I'm going to go ahead and open this 3D view. So I'm going to double click on it to open it up. And when I open it up now, you can now see the 3D view is the one that is bold, and now we can see it at the top. Based on the views that are open, I can switch between the tabs, so I can go front and back just like this, and whichever view that is active will be the one that is bold. If in the event that I want to find a view in the projects browser, so for instance I want to look for the 3D view, let's assume that I collapse all of this over here. Let's see, let me just collapse everything. If I wanted to look for it in the project browser, what I could do is that I can right click on an open space, and then you're going to see an option here to find in projects browser. So that way I can find the particular view that I'm looking for. Now a 3D view is a very good place to start from when you're looking or trying to decipher the architectural drawing. Visibly I can see that this particular building has two floors. We have the ground floor and we have the first floor, if we're actually working with European standards or British standards. If we're American, we'll say this was the first and the second floor. So we're going to be assuming this here, the first floor, or rather the first level is the ground floor, then the one on top is the first floor. I can also see that this is the name of the project at the top of the screen. Or before we open it up, we have here that this is the LBS filling station shopping complex, and that's the name of the project. If I wanted more information about the project, and this is actually a very good habit when you are starting to work with Revit, is to go and look at the project information. Now how do I check for project information? We see at the top of the screen we have tabs in Revit, and I'm going to go over here and click on the Manage tab. On the Manage tab here, under the Settings panel, we're going to see an option here called Project Information. Now if I move my cursor over any of those commands, you see that it will give me information about it before even selecting it. Now depending on the scale or display scale of your screen, you may not actually see the full name. Mine has a quite a smaller scale, so that's why I can see it. So if yours is just showing as an icon, all you need to do is just move your cursor to it and check to see if it is the particular tool you're looking for. So I'm going to click on project information, and over here I see some particular information about the project. So I can see the organization name, the organization description, building name, whoever the author was. I can also see the project number and all other details as well. And here this is just what we call a properties dialog box, so it shows you more information about a particular project. So when I'm done reviewing this, I can go ahead and close it up. Now let's go ahead and start interrogating our model. Now aside from the 3D view here, I have other views as well. So over here we have what we call the floor plans. Right now we have here GF, which stands for ground floor. We have 1F, which stands for first floor, and then we have RL, which stands for roof level. I'm going to open up the ground floor by double clicking on it. Now I can see visibly on the ground floor that this particular project here has grid lines, and that's a good indicator. There will be cases where the architect, for instance, does not provide grid lines. So it will be very important for you to go ahead and create one and then send those grid lines back to your architect. But if in the event that he does create grid lines, that's a plus for you. So I can see here the information on the ground floor plan, such as the number of stores. So for instance, here I have 1, 2, 3 stores here on the right, just before the middle staircase that leads up to the first floor. I have 3 more floors on the left, and then to the back of the building as well, I also have 3 more stores at the back, and then I have another 3 more floors at the back here as well. I can also see that this is the access to get to the first floor. So from the right side of the building, I can access the first floor. Let's go ahead and look at the first floor plan. So from the first floor plan here, I open it up. I can see here that I have just 6 floors as opposed to the, let's say, almost, this is 6 plus 6, 12 stores that I have on the ground floor. So on the first floor, I have 6 bigger stores, and I can access them from the top like this. So you can see 1, 2, 3. We have 1, 2, 3 as well. You can also access it just like we saw on the ground floor. If I open up the roof floor plan, I can also see more information about the roof. So this is just a plain flat roof, and it's actually sloped, but we'll get to that later on. We also have a very small void to access the roof from here. Let's go ahead and look at the elevations. To see the elevations, we have a separate hierarchy for it. So we have building elevations. Let's look at the building elevation from the south. Now the south is basically how we're looking at it in this direction, so due south like this. If I go ahead and open it up, you can see I have the south elevation for the building, so as if we're looking at it from the front. To reference it better, if I go to the 3D view, it's as if we're looking at it in this direction. In the south view, any building elevation view, I should have information about the building levels. So for instance here, I can see the ground floor starts at exactly 0. We have here the first floor here, starting at exactly maybe 3.15 meters, and this is actually measured in millimeters, by the way. We also have the roof level to be at exactly 6.3 meters. Now very important is that we need to exactly know the units we're working with instead of assuming. So how did I know, for instance, this is measured in millimeters? What I could do is that I can come back here to the manage tab, and then under settings you're going to see project units. If I click on project units, for instance, here you can see what every single thing is measured in. So in terms of length here, we can see that it is measured in millimeters over here. We can actually decide to go ahead and change this, but I'm going to leave it as it is. So most of the units here are going to be measured in millimeters. As we go on, there may be cases where we may need to modify some of the settings, but as of right now we don't need to, so I'm going to close it up. So for the sake of every other thing that we're going to be doing, we're going to be measured using millimeters as our basic measurement system, so just in case anybody is wondering. So this is very important. Information such as the elevation is important because we know exactly what the story height is. So for instance, we know from the ground floor to the first floor is about 3.15 meters. We know that from here to here is probably another 3,150 mm, 3,150 mm, that's 3.15 meters as well once we subtract this. I can as well also switch and look at any other views as well. So if I go to the south and the north, I can look at it more in depth. So you can see that there's a door at the back of the building, that's the north, so as if we're looking at it from the back over here. Now we can actually intuitively look at it in the 3D view, but we'll come to that later on. Now this method is useful especially if you are used to working with let's say for instance CAD files also. Then I can also look at the building from the side. So I have here the west and the east view. So if I open up the west view, I can look at it from this side here. And if I open up the east view, I can do that as well. We also have some things called building sections. So to open up a building section, you can see right now I only have 2 building sections in the project. The first one here is building section 1. I'm just going to go ahead and double click to open it up. And we have a building section through the building. Now you may be wondering exactly where that building section is. Let's go back and look at a floor plan. I'm going to go ahead and close most of these tabs there that are open right now. If you have a lot open and you don't want to close it one by one by one, there is a very useful tool at the top of your screen over here called Close Inactive Views. I'm going to do that to close any view that is not open at the moment, so we can just see this building section 1. Now this section is cutting through the building. We want to know exactly which part of the building is cutting through. To see it better, I'm going to open up a floor plan. So let's open up the ground floor plan. So we see 2 section heads over here. The first one is this one here. If I click on it just once, you're going to see information about it in the properties dialog box, just like I explained earlier on. If I scroll down, for instance, here, we can see that the name of the view is called building section 1, which is exactly this one that is open right now. So that's how we actually know exactly which one we're looking at per time. When we go ahead and place these sections, for instance, on sheets, we'll be able to see more information in the section head. But this hasn't been done in this project. Another way, for instance, to open up a section view to better understand it is that I can go ahead and double click on the section head to open it up. So instead of coming to the project browser, I can just come over here and double click on it to open up that view. If I go, for instance, back to the floor plan, let me zoom out a bit and move over to this one here. If I click on it once on the line, I can see that this has a name, building section 2, which is actually referring to this section. I can also right click on the line and then click on find in project browser to find that section. It's just like I've done over here. And likewise as well, I can double click on this to open up the view. So you can see this is the building section in the other direction. We'll be doing some of this once we start sorry, we'll be doing some of this once we start the structural G. I'm going to go ahead and open up the 3D view. So I'm going to double click to open that up. And likewise as well, we can actually go ahead and look through the 3D model. So this is more or less my preferred method. I'm going to close any inactive views right now. And to look through the 3D model, what I could do is that I can actually go ahead and cut through the building. But let's look at some basic navigation tips. Now these basic navigation tips will also apply in other views as well. So for instance here, if I wanted to zoom in and zoom out into an area, I can use my middle scroll button by zooming. If I wanted to zoom in, I just scroll up. So I zoom in into the view. If I wanted to zoom out, I scroll down. If I wanted to fit view fast, I can just double click on my middle scroll button and it's going to fit every single object that is in view. If I wanted to orbit around, all I need to do is hold down my shift key and press the middle scroll button, and you're going to see that your cursor is going to change to an orbit icon. Let me take that again. That is the shift key, and you see your cursor will change to the cursor with a minus key at the top. While holding down your shift key, hold down the middle scroll button. And while you are pressing those two things down, you're going to notice that your cursor will change to an orbit icon. Now you can either move left, right, up and down depending on where you want to orbit to move around that area. So just like this, I can look at the back of my building. If I wanted to look up, I can move down. If I wanted to look down, I can move up to look at it. And I can actually scroll all around just to see it better. Now practice makes perfect, so it's very important that you spend a lot of time using this. Now in elevation and plan views, it works a bit different. So you can't orbit because those are more or less like plans, but the same principle applies. So for instance, if I go back here to the ground floor plan, If I wanted to zoom in, I wanted to zoom out, I can zoom in like this by moving, scrolling down. I can zoom out like this. If I wanted to zoom in, I can scroll up. If I wanted to fit in view, I can just double click on my middle scroll button and it's going to fit in view. Something to also take note of is that where you are zooming in and zooming out to depends on the area that your mouse is. So you can see right now that if I move my mouse to this wall without clicking on it, and I decide to zoom up and down, it's going to zoom to that area. So likewise as well, if I move my mouse towards this wall, it's going to zoom towards that area as well. So if I zoom up or zoom out, it's zoom to that specific area. Likewise as well, without actually moving my mouse to an object, if I select the object, I can also decide to zoom into it like this, zooming out and zooming in. Or rather, sorry, this doesn't actually work in this view. I'll show you in the 3D view. But before we go and do that, let's now talk about panning. So panning is quite different from zooming. Panning works in a way that you can actually click and drag at a particular scale, or rather a particular view that you're looking at. So for instance, if I've zoomed in like this, but I want to look towards the right side of the building, instead of zooming out and zooming in, which can actually prove to be stressful, I can hold down my middle scroll button and you can see the cursor change to this move icon, and with that I can just move my mouse either to the left, to the right, to the top or down to pan around the area. So all you need to do is just hold down your middle scroll button and drag your mouse to look around the area. Now a combination of all of this will allow you to easily navigate through the window. This is actually quite similar if you've been using CAD applications before. The same thing as well applies in elevations and section views as well. Also in the 3D view, it does apply. So if I zoom in, for instance, to this area, hold down my middle scroll button, I can pan around the area. Now what I wanted to explain earlier was something like this. So if I wanted to orbit around this door, right, what I could do is I can click on the door, and then if I hold down my shift key and my middle scroll button, it will orbit around that selected object. Now this may be very useful depending on where you want to see at a particular point in time. Now if that particular object is not selected and I decide to orbit around, it's going to orbit around what I have, what particular view that I'm currently on. So it's not going to be very specific. If I wanted to, for instance, orbit around this roof here, with it being selected and I hold down my shift key and middle scroll button, it's to make sure that I can always see the roof anytime I'm orbiting. Alright, great. So we've reached sorry about that little gasp here. So we've reached the 30 minutes mark, and I promised to make sure that we have a little stretch and a little breather as we go on. So we're going ahead and deciphering the structure